I'll start with a couple of things because I wrote notes and I've had appraisers call me, so I want to give some kind of hints and tricks and things that have been going on in the MLS. Room count seems to be really widespread in the MLS. You're seeing 1,400 square foot houses that have 10 rooms. I'm not sure how they're counting rooms, and I don't know. I've been in appraisal, in real estate school for a long time, so I'm not sure how that goes. It seems to me possibly that people are trying to put their bathroom count back into the full room count. So when you're doing, so you'll see a 5, 3, and 2 as 7, 3, and 2, and you look at it and go, well, it doesn't have a bonus room, it doesn't have a dining room. Where are the other 2 rooms? Walk-in closets, laundry rooms, your typical off the garage laundry room or your little one upstairs, a laundry area, 6x6 is not a room. Older houses, you might have that big utility room in the back where they got the refrigerator and the laundry room and stuff like that. It has windows and things. That's a room. I'll just call it a utility room. But those are your older houses. Almost every one of your other houses, you're not counting walk-in closets and living room or anything. It's just walk-in closets or the laundry room, living room. So those room counts should get better because they just look weird when we're when our houses are so similar and the room counts are different. And you're like, these are almost the same floor plans.
But how do they count open floor plans? Because I think that's a lot of confusion. When you have a dining room, living room together, is that one room?
Yeah, most of your eat-in kitchens would just be one room. When you have that type of thing, what our rules say that if you could put a wall there and make it a separate room, count it as 2 rooms, even though it doesn't have a wall there. It's functional. And I say those are one of those things where no one's going to hold your feet to the fire. Some people might count it, but most of your just eat-in kitchens are not, we're not counting that. But you might have an L-shaped living room that goes into a dining room. We'd probably count that.
The big, problem falls in when people are trying to count extra bedrooms. They're trying to add that extra bonus room as a bedroom that doesn't have a closet in it. And the house is only permitted to have 3, and they want to say it has 4. And then you start getting into issues with septic tank, capacities and those kind of things. So be very careful when you're out in areas that, like Hope County, you're out in the country, that people run septic tanks. And so they're only, permitted for the number of bedrooms.
Everybody wants to put that lucky 4 in there, right? There's a couple of ways that's been handled. If it's even has a closet. Now you go upstairs and some of these 1.5, they've got a closet and a bathroom. We would call that a bedroom. But your typical bonus room, even if it has a closet, you're better off saying that it's a 3-bedroom house with a finished bonus room and closet. And some of them are real smart, says bonus room can be 4th bedroom. As long as you're disclosing that it's not a true 4-bedroom and a bonus room, but a bonus room that can be used as a bedroom. And that was the same thing. There have been lawsuits. Agents in the country have paid for an upgrade to the septic system because they said 4-bedroom and the people it's rated for a 3-bedroom and they got themselves in trouble. So that's it as far as room count. There's another little thing that has popped up: subdivisions. I did an appraisal in Beaver Creek North. I've got comps in there from Beaver Creek South, Beaver Creek Plantation, and that happens in a lot of neighborhoods, right? So remember, when you're in a platted subdivision, most of your stuff is, look at your legal description. That is the subdivision it goes into. And it's not the one next to it or anything that sounds like it. Now, because I'm also in the MLS, I realize there are some weird abbreviations for subdivisions, and you may not be able to find it. We were just telling him Williamsburg Plantation. Good luck, right? So if you can't find what you feel comfortable is, your thing is blank it all out on the left-hand side. Just put closed and no date or anything. Put your street in and see if something's sold on your street. Pull up that MLS sheet, and that may show you the abbreviated subdivision that you should be in, rather than you just putting it in the wrong one. If it's not in a platted subdivision, it's just not in subdivision. And I've had some agents like, well, it's 3 houses down from the entrance of this subdivision and calling it that. And the legal description is lot 6 LMA land. Sure.
So I have a property in Irwin. Originally I didn't put a subdivision, but for whatever reason, my bid told me to put the subdivision as just Irwin.
And you can't, oh yeah, okay. Rayford is the same thing. You put it in Rayford. Haymount, because I live in that area and I've been in there a while. You look at your legal description and it may say Lafayette Heights. It may say all kinds of stuff. It's Haymount. And I've called some people to say, look, no one's ever going to find your Lafayette Height listing, right? And there was one that was on the market a long time. And I said, this is on Pearl Street. And I said, this should have sold a long time ago. It's a beautiful house. They can't find it, right? So I was like, and I know Haymount is weird, but it just keeps on stretching. It's getting pretty close to Savoy Heights back there now, right? With that new stuff.
Construction up there listed as.
Now, it has not crossed the street over there to Cumberland Heights, right? Now, and I see people doing that, Haymount area or whatever. If you look at a tax value and the lot says 20 on one, and you're looking at Cape Fear Avenue on the others, and it says 65, you're not in the same place, right? So, but they are the same age house, might have been the same builder. So it is, I know that's an odd area, but most of us are doing platted subdivisions, just the oddballs.
And when we take a look at those properties, we might end up using a comp from that other area, but you'll see a $40,000 adjustment for that difference in what's the 3 rules of real estate? Location, location, and location. And, people want to take advantage of that difference in location value, but, we don't care.
Yeah. So those were the the two things that I saw, and the other one I will add. Okay.
So I always start with the subdivision, but sometimes I go like 2 miles out or 1 mile. So is your preference to start the subdivision or do you like the mile?
Oh, I immediately do the subdivision. The next thing I would do is elementary school.
Okay.
Or middle school, and then sometimes high school. Now, because we've done data share with Raleigh and they're all messed up, I will do another search that's just zip code to see if, and suddenly I'll have a sale in my neighborhood that just didn't show up any other way. So we're in a way now that you search about 3 different ways, the way the MLS is now.
Right.
You just have to. Or they have them in lowercase. I mean, they put some stuff in there or they're different. They're not abbreviated like ours are. So it's just that last check I do is like, let me see if there's something that I missed. And so is.
To do that,
Mhm.
is I do a geographic, I put in the property address and do 0.5 miles or 1 mile. And that way I'll pick up anything in Raleigh that's not properly listed.
Yeah.
And you exclude schools, you exclude subdivisions names, just do a 0.5 or 1 mile radius.
Yeah.
The schools don't work all the time now, because now if you just put in Cumberland County schools or Hope County schools, well, now that does nothing. So we are expanding our searches now because of the way the MLS has grown. It used to be you could just do school, or I never did zip code. So that way you'll find I got a bigger pool to pull from. So I'll go to the first question because this is also very dear to my heart. Why is it important to put detailed info in the MLS about basements? This is because Fannie Mae requires us to separate below grade improvements, even if it's finished. So even though you sell it as the full square footage, it's got a bathroom down there, it's got a living room, it's got other things, it's finished, it's fine. For your purposes, you put the full square footage. When we use that, or when we appraise your listing, we're going to have to pull that out on separate lines, and that includes room counts. So what we ask is that you put your full square footage, you put basement is included. And then something like, 638 square foot finished basement includes half bath, laundry room, living room, something, or den or something like that. We'll separate that out for you. You use your full room count, your full square footage. That house is sold at 3,200 square foot every time it's sold. It still is 3,200 square feet. If you happen to get an appraisal and you're doing wanting to take the square footage off the appraisal, remember to add those 2 numbers back, because I've had that too. They were like, appraiser said it was this. I was like, well, they said that it was above grade. That's what it was. Look at the line below it. There's another 800 and something square feet. So just look at those 2. It's a lending requirement, and I've argued with underwriters over the years why that house in Pinehurst is on the lake with a full. Why would I not call that something? I mean, why do I have to call that basement and separate out? It is part of the living area.
Yeah.
So it's just what we're required to do. And in that basements, that's what, and pictures always. I can tell whether it's semi-finished by those pictures or whether it's really good, but definitely separate it out in your remarks.
Yeah, having exposed concrete, cement block walls in the basement, that's unfinished. Come on. Yeah, they painted it, but no.
You're looking for it to be
like
as nice as the top floor is.
It's not
right?
like upstairs.
And that's no different than when people finish off their garages. Is it a nice finished off garage, or do they just throw some AstroTurf down there and a window unit? And we see that and they go, oh, but it's cool for you to hang out in there. It can be your man cave, but that is not what we're looking at for square footage. Right?
No.
We're looking for vents. is what the first thing I do when I walk into those things is look for a vent to go, all right, well, I know it's heated and cooled, and then it's conditioned. So
That's kind of leading right into the next question that we got this year.
well, I wanted to add that because I put this in here because it's another thing that has popped up. Detached dwelling units. You've got a double garage in the backyard and they got an apartment over it, or a kitchenette, maybe a half bath. Even seasoned agents are adding that square footage and that room count back into the house. So you're misleading the public saying that this is a 3,200 square foot house with 3 baths and it's only 2,600. And I've seen older agents do this, and it's almost, and then it's impossible for us to find when we get your listing that has, I'm trying to find another one and they're adding it all together. So it took me hours on the last one, and I just had an appraiser call me the other day and said, how do we find these and why are they adding this together? Detached, when we say detached, and that, because that's confusing too. Even if it has a breezeway or a screened hallway or whatever it is, if I can't walk from finished, heated, cooled space right into it, it's detached. And I've had some older houses in Fayetteville where you had to go out into the garage and go up the stairs to the bonus room. That square footage is not included. Disclose, put it in, just put it in there. You can put the square footage of that bonus room. It's, only accessed by the garage. That lets us know and lets the potential buyer know it's not accessible from the inside of the house. But there's also a little blank that says apartment, or I don't know if it says something unit next to it.
Auxiliary living unit.
Yeah, and so if you haven't, check that box, because that's the first one I go when I'm trying to find these things. Everything else I'm doing asterisk detached, asterisk man cave. I just go all the things like you could possibly call this thing to go try to find these. And it takes a long time when if you just check the right box and put it the way it was, we'd find it. So that's it for those, the basements. You can now go to number 2.
Okay, and we had 2 emailed in questions for 2025, and we had a list of about 30 something from 2024. A lot of the questions are repeatable, like a reconsideration of value. Okay, that goes on every year. How do you do that? Because there's been a lot of inconsistencies from lender to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, all those kind of things. So those are ongoing questions, and that's why we're pulling forward the 24. The second question we got this year was an agent wanting to know, hey, I had I'm gonna read it right here. My clients looked at a house that had an unpermitted sunroom. That was approximately 10 years ago when it was added. Underneath that, there's a water spigot, next to it, an outlet. Will this pass a VA appraisal? Not sure if this is an answerable question. Well, the answer is, actually asking 3 things there. About the sunroom, and the proximity of having a water and power to each other. This is a safety issue, okay? You need to get a building inspector out there in the city or the county to say, hey, this is great. God bless you, go forward and conquer. If they don't, then, you don't want Susan and Bobby and Earl out in that extra room. It may not be safe for them to be there. And, did the guy just run bare wire, or did he use conduit for that kind of stuff to enclose the wiring like you're supposed to for home construction? There's a lot of those kind of things that we don't inspect for, okay? We're not home inspectors. Your home inspector, I think you brought that up yesterday when you were talking about some of these questions. A good home inspection, that's a good reason to get one. They can tell you a lot of that kind of stuff. If it would pass building inspection, be declared, livable area. And that's gold. You tell us, hey, wasn't permitted, 3 years ago. My sellers have just gotten it inspected and it's been approved. If it's a finished sunroom that's heated, cooled, we can start looking at that. Hey, is the quality nice enough to compare it to the finished areas of the house? Can we include it in the square footage? And the appraisers would do that. Okay. Now, like before, when I mentioned, if you had exposed concrete block and, slab, bare concrete floor, all windows and a window unit, is that really equal to the rest of the house?
And if flooring is a little iffy, because I've gone in there, if you got nice terrazzo tile in there, because there's people who are nice ceramic tile, you may not even have that in the house. It doesn't have to be carpeted or anything like that. What they just ask us is it heated and cooled and finished? And does it appear to be constructed in a workmanlike manner? Outside, same with finish, then when they finish off their garages, we use that square footage. This is no problem with that at all. And the thing is that they only keep permits for 7 years. So it could have been permitted, right? So we don't even know that, but we're looking at quality of finish and heated and cooled. And if that looks good, we're fine. We're using it as a square footage.
Your big picture into that is if the square footage in the tax record says 1,300 square feet and you're measuring it or having it measured and it's coming up to 1,400, if you include that, then, the tax office and the building permitting office should shake hands to share that information. They're cousins, they talk to one another all the time about that stuff. And trust me, I'm working with the tax office right now on, taxes. They share that information. So, if you're out there looking at it and it looks like it's bigger than what's on the tax record, ask about it, tell them what's going on, then start looking with a very critical eye at the area that, hey, that could have been an enclosed carport. That could be a closed garage. Start looking at for those kind of details. Okay. Let's see, did you want the next one?
The reconsideration of value. I think we got one for how to win a reconsideration of value. Now, I don't really know the answer to that because I can tell you over the years, I mean, we're looking at generally, I mean, until days on market get really far, we're probably looking at the same comps you did for your CMA. If your CMA, I mean, the argument I guess we had with agents, COVID was a different world, but you're like, well, your CMA didn't come out at this price. The fact that somebody offered this doesn't change what the fair market value was. Now we were bailed out by appraisal addendums in there because we were like, all right, well, good. I mean, because that's what happens in the rest of the market. People just bring money to closing if they want to pay more for a house. I understand we've been in this VA dome for so long. No, if the appraisal doesn't come in, the deal's dead, right? Or we have to lower the price. And I've argued with agents over the years, no, you don't. They can still buy any house they want to buy for whatever they want to buy it for. But for lending purposes, we're doing fair market value, and that is not highest bidder. It's not multiple contracts. It's not all the things that they yell at us about. It was on a contract in one day. That doesn't change with the definition of fair market value. That's just somebody bidding up a house. And
explain fair market value.
Fair market value is the price someone pays for a comparable property in these market conditions with a knowledgeable seller and buyer. Right. So it is not this particular property that 9 people bid on to get it up, or the individual person. And over the years, I've had somebody overpay for a house just for the fact that it was across the street from the grandkids and he had terminal cancer. So he paid $20,000 more than what, it was worth to do that, but he did not care about the price. Right. So you don't know the motivations of an individual person, which is why we're putting in multiple comparables. Because we don't know why that person wanted that house so bad or this one was on the market too far. I do see a lot of this. I try to tell the agents, stop pricing things at COVID prices. Because when I start seeing, when I have a comp and I can't understand, it looks beautiful. I mean, there are your photos, but it looks beautiful. And I see no reason why it's lower. I go back to the history and I go, well, they asked for this at the top and it started reducing it and then expired. And then they put it back on the market and started reducing it. That's the best way to not have your house sell at what the market value should have been, right? Now you're desperate at the end. So you're like, price it competitively, not to the moon, not what Zillow told you, because that's an algorithm. That's not an appraisal. But I know we've gotten those sheets too. So I'm sure one of your sellers says, hey, look, this is the stuff I pulled from Zillow. And they've done that to us too. And we go, I don't want to see it. All right. That's not helpful.
You can't send us a property that you figured out had sold through Zillow as a comp. Okay. There's not enough information in it. They don't have the level of information that you get on the properties when you list the property. They're not going inside it. They don't know if it has a security system, which is an adjustment. They don't know about privacy fence, which is an adjustment. They don't see any of that. It's like Jason's saying, it's an algorithm.
So how to win that reconsideration of value? I mean, it just doesn't come back very often because, I mean, we do pull the comps, right? And then we pull other comps. And then I look to see if those are really market sales, if they're really indicative of the market. I mean, we're not trying to cut deals, but I would lie more frankly, if I've got to do something fraudulent to get to your value was never there. I mean, and you didn't come in at that a CMA unless you really don't know how to do a CMA. And I understand your problems. Here's a CMA seller and they go, Zillow told me I'm listing it for this. And you're like, I'm trying to advise you, but you will list it for whatever you want. So I understand you're under your client's direction to do these things. But I try to say, try to talk them down and go, this could result in a lower price than what we would have got originally, because you're going to have me reducing this every 30 days. And then it looks desperate. To win that, most of the time I don't get better comps, and I will get comps that I already used. And then there's some that, agents will send me. I was like, these two comps are going to bring it down in value if I use them. I was like, so be careful what you're looking for. And in places like Hope County, I would get stuff. I was like, all right, well, you didn't give me anything in the neighborhood or the neighborhood next. You cherry picked 2 miles that way, 6 miles. I mean, all over your sales price, right? And newer, nicer houses and things like that. No, that's not how you pick them, right? You pick them the same way we do: size, age, condition, and then you start looking at the lot values in the neighborhood for seeing. So typically, I don't know that anybody's won a reconsideration of value from me, because no one has ever sent me stuff better than what I had. And especially nowadays, where I have a lot of clients that are wanting an active listing or a pending sale, that needs to support it too, because they're going to turn around and go, why would your seller pay this when they could get this for this amount of money? So I will get that question. So, you see a small summary report of our work, but we have looked at all the market before we have narrowed it down to those 3 or 4 comps that we're going to use. So it's like we feel pretty confident by the time I hand it in, I'm pretty good. So it's going to be hard to argue against.
And my comment with this would be, the word I wouldn't use is win. I wouldn't use win. I'd use support. We're driven by data. We're looking for data. We want solid information. And when that comes back to you looking for comps, if you know what we've used in the report to support a different value, find something closer, find something more similar, and find something that sold more recently. Because we're not perfect, okay? We're looking at the same data you guys are. Maybe somebody spelled the subdivision wrong and we didn't find it when we searched. Maybe maybe their office assistant was out, and when we did the search, their assistant hadn't put it into the MLS as closed yet. So we didn't find it again. So those things can happen. But if you look for closed more recently than anything we have, more similar, that's and closer to it.
And in that, please remember to close out your listings, because that is another thing. Only because I had a client that requires active or pending sales, I found these, and then I go look at the tax card because I don't have the records, and it said it closed in June. And I had 2 of them in the same neighborhood, and I was like, well, that's great now, because I now have some comps that I want to use, but I don't have a pending sale. And this would have never been found if I hadn't have been looking for pending or active listings, because it's not closed. So please go in and close out your listings. And I know Debbie writes something every once in a while to tell people to do it, but they still seem to forget. And those are comps that were all over yours. Is the best comp for yours and all over. I never saw it. Never.
I'll look to see it's closed, and I'll say, hey, just check and see if this is
I
closed.
hit my little policeman and I go, tax records say this closed in June, for the status discrepancy, and try to get it to change. But that tells you how long it's been sitting in there, right? It closed in June. So a lot of people have skipped over that one. Go ahead.
One of the next questions was about, what is the adjustment for a garage? What is the adjustment for a sauna? What is the adjustment for a pool? Well, the answer to that is there's no cheat sheet. We can't give you a page and say, okay, here's all the numbers. This is what you need to know. They don't exist, okay? All the adjustments are ranges. Just as a house will sell for one price in Montclair or one price in, what's the north side of Haymount called? Cumberland Heights?
Yeah.
But that same house by the same builder, built the same year in Haymount, sells for something less. That's the location. So in one location, the adjustment might be $5,000 for a garage. In another, it might be $20,000. So, we can't tell you hard and fast, hey, it's always going to be X. Okay.
And then that question, they were talking about cost. Cost doesn't mean anything to us outside of new construction, because contributory value. I mean, a pool costs a lot of money. You're not getting it. When we compare it to other houses with pools, it does not come out with $30,000. And that's kind of how we pull a lot of the stuff of these garages. And you can get all the way down to, say, maybe Lafayette Village, where they don't have a lot of pools there, and it's a 1,200 square foot, but they put a little kidney-shaped pool. That's probably a $3,000 pool. And people so it's not cost. And so anytime That's the number that builders always come out with. And sellers always tell you how much this patio or whatever costs them. And we're like, it's cost does not matter to us.
We are looking for market value, and that's, yeah.
And contributory value of that improvement.
Yeah, and if you talk to your sellers about that, the pool is a really good example because, one guy might, oh boy, I grew up with a pool. I love it. Our kids are gonna love it. And this guy's like, I don't want to clean that. I don't want to pay for the chemicals. I don't want to worry about somebody falling into it. I don't want to have to pay to repair the fence. And so that's why what it costs to build it is not the same as what gets paid for it in the market. So we're looking for market value for all of these things. Okay. So even though they give us, hey, man, it cost me $120,000 to add that, 600 square foot addition on and change up the garage and raise the floor and put a crawl space in there and everything. That's great. Glad to know you did that. We'll go see.
Usually you get value for something like that, but when you have, an industrial garage in the back with giant bay doors because you do large equipment and stuff and pay $100,000, or the contributory value of that to a regular person buying your house is not going to be any near what you needed it for, right? And so you will see things, we just call those super adequate improvements. And so when you have things that are outside of the market, there's value in them, but it's not going to be anywhere close to cost. And I just had an agent has a really strange custom built house. And let's talk about custom built just for a second. It's custom built for one person, right? It's custom built for you. So you telling me that your house is custom built doesn't mean I like it or he likes it or she likes it, right? It's exactly what you wanted. And so they always think that the value is more for what I paid for it. And just remember that it is now a spec home after you're reselling it, right? And so now it's just contributory value versus other houses with patios and barns and whatever they have. So
bouncing through some of the other questions, because some of these ones from 24 are repeats. One of the things that comes up is, what is the proper protocol for an agent to call an appraiser? When can you call us? And I think we touched on this a little bit before the program started at 10. You can't call and say, hey, is the value going to be there? Hey,
and in the old days you did. In the old days, we got calls from everybody about that. Can you tell me what it came in at?
And we can't share that. As the broker, whether you're working with the buyer or the seller, the appraisal, you are not our client. Okay, the lender is our client. So we are completing an appraisal for the client. And I think a lot of folks in our area understand chain of command. You have to go back through the chain of command to get a question to the appraiser about those kind of questions. When it's okay to call an appraiser is, hey, I've seen the report. You asked for a repair to the roof. Where? What? I don't see a picture. If you want to have repairs explained, perfectly logical to call. I like people to call me about that so I can explain it. But I tried to put pictures in there of, hey, there's a busted outlet in the third bedroom, the pink one. And there's a picture of a pink wall with a broken out and wires dangling out in space. That makes it easy for folks to understand. It's not because I don't want you to call me about the repairs. All right. Just save us both time.
May need clarification. I've had some where we talked about the concrete drive, the tree had just broken it all up. And they were like, is it okay if my seller puts in a crush and run drive? And I was like, that's fine. That's an all-weather surface for FHA. You're fine. You can do that. But those are the type of questions we're like, no, absolutely. And of course, I mean, I'm on the MLS, but I told people, if you've got a question about something weird that's not mine, give me a call. I'll give you if I can't find the answer for you, I'll direct you to somebody that can find the answer for you. If you got a really weird one or some kind of problem, you're just like, how would an appraiser handle this before I get to it? Let me go with the next one. Well, what goes into the appraisal process, and that's really quick. And I'm going to add two of these because you asked it, does an appraiser have to go see it in one of these questions? So
yeah.
The appraisal is, I'm going to go out, we're going to measure the house, we're going to walk around the house. On conventional, as we spoke, the rest of you might have not been here. On a conventional, we're just observing everything, right? I'm not opening up cabinets, I'm turning on faucets. It is anything that needs to be repaired. And that could be, and we wouldn't even put something like dated carpeting, but you've got fascia and soffit and rotten pieces like that. That's all deferred maintenance for us. We give them an estimated cost to cure, and that's just added into the overall condition of your house. I mean, are you a house that has a lot of that stuff, and you're just kind of what we call average condition, you still got the vinyl flooring and the white appliances and stuff, not a lot of updates or whatever, well, that's going to be a lower condition house. But outside of that, unless it's a safety concern, that's still going to, that would be an issue. We're not doing anything. We're not calling for repairs. And I say that a lot of times people say, well, whatever the repairs the appraiser is called for. We don't call for any repairs, but FHA is going to require repairs and VA would require
And the lender.
repairs. And the lender might, but like I said, conventional are usually the easiest. You're going to get away with most with deferred maintenance and cosmetic stuff. And it asked, the next thing we do after do that, I'm drawing a floor plan, writing in the rooms, writing down what the ceiling fans, carpeting, what type of appliances you have, things like that. Everything else is essentially just photos. And then the process is I take that information back, sit at the computer, and I start putting in there, put your sketch in, find out the square footage, and then I start pulling comps and start making adjustments and things like that. That's pretty much the appraisal process for us once we from inspection to completion. It did ask, do we have to go out to the house for an appraisal? That's a scope of work. We can do a desktop for somebody doing a refinance. It means Wells Fargo already has your loan and you're just getting a refinance or something like that. But like, we just need to give you to give us a value based on the information that we have. That's the lowest level would be a desktop. There's a drive-by where I just take a picture of the front and a street, right? I don't know what the inside of your house looks like, whether it's been updated or not. I don't know what the backside looks like. I always look for an MLS sheet on every house to just see if it sold before so that I could have a little more information about the house. But there are times where it hasn't sold in 20 years and there's none of that. I'm going tax records and my visual inspection, and it has disclosures in the appraisal that, hey, I didn't see it. You know, this is based on the house being an average. Could look like wild dogs living there. But for us, we have to make the assumption that the outside looked okay. We assume the inside's in. So that's a lower level, and it generally depends on what the lender wants, credit, things like that.
Something that, yeah, we're not lenders, but reading through everything from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, another even lower one is what's called an appraisal waiver. And it's something more typical that you'll see in some of the larger metropolitan areas. You know, there's 500 houses in the subdivision. So they know that the 1,100 square foot houses with a carport typically sell between this and this. So they have their own algorithms, their own mathematical calculation for it. It won't require appraisal, but then you're kind of shooting craps with, you know, is it going to fall within the parameters that they want? And usually a lender will offer that to you up front if, you know, they're familiar and it's a big enough subdivision with information. If you're out in the country, they ain't gonna offer that. Yeah, there's no subdivisions out there basically. So, you know, 7 acres out off of Maxwell Road, ain't happening. But you get those. This leads into what's the difference between conventional VA and FHA? I like to tell folks, think of a pyramid. Conventional are the ones that most everybody gets, okay? They're broad-based. It's very simple. We look at it, the house, just like a consumer would, okay? Going out and taking a look at it. Hey, yeah, it's missing a couple of shingles off the back. Is that really, you know, impacting it or anything? Not really, okay? If it's missing a couple of, you know, big squares and you can see decking, then there's an issue, okay? Across the board, FHA, conventional, VA, that's going to be a problem. If it's leaking inside, that's going to be a problem, okay? VA takes it another step past that. Now, Jason and I are not on the VA panel, so we can't really address a lot of VA type questions. But FHA is the most intensive requirements from the appraiser. I have to take pictures in the attic. I have to take pictures in crawl space. I have to turn on faucets and flush commodes and run showers through the entire house. I'm making sure all that functions normally. I have to turn on the heat in the winter. I have to turn on the air conditioning in the summer. I have to see not only that it comes on when the thermostat says for it to come on, but then that it shuts off by the thermostat, okay? So we're checking all those things. Conventional, that's an assumption. Yeah, you don't even have to have the power on, okay, for a conventional loan, okay? VA, they aren't requiring the power to be on because they do some of those checks. I have to see that at least one window in every bedroom functions such that a small child can get out in case of a fire. And this boils back to, you know, some of you folks might remember all the security bars that people used to put on their windows. Hey, we're going to keep the bad guys out. Well, the other thing is, it turns it into a fire trap for little Susie to be able to get out of the house, right? There's a fire in the hallway. Where can she go? Unless there's some kind of internal release mechanism for it, which 99% of the time they don't have on those. Jason was just talking about looking at a house in the last month that had the bars on it.
Mhm.
And hey, they all got to come off because you can't have.
If they don't have an internal release, the newer ones would, you'd be able to open up the window and they have an internal release, but the older ones are just bolted on the windows. And it's like, no one's getting out of those. So those, and in some cases on a conventional, a lender might make you take them off anyway. It is a fire hazard, that's not code anymore. And in the older houses, they're there. So you might want, as soon as you get there and see, I've got bolted on, you may have an issue.
And the last thing is lender requirements, okay? Specific lenders. I think everybody's watched the Property Brothers and the other kinds of flip this house shows. And the terms hard money loan, hey, we want paid back in 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, those kind of things. They're typically not getting an appraisal, but those folks, they don't care about, hey, what's it need done? That's why we're giving you the money. You're going to go do that and then you're going to pay us back. But if you think about that, also the other lenders that are giving you their money to buy those properties, they sometimes add in and sprinkle, hey, I want a picture of the water heater. I don't care that you say that there's one there. I want a picture of it. I want a picture of the house number. I want a picture of the furnace. I want a picture of the heat pump. And okay, so, but that's, that's not FHA, that's not VA, that's the specific lender giving us extra things to do. Miss Emily, I see you have been working with some of the folks, viewing from online. Did they have some questions?
No, everybody's doing well. I just was coming to check that you guys were doing well back here too.
We're having a great part.
Yeah, because of time constraints, I'm gonna put a couple of these together just because so we can get when we get to the back page. But how often in your area do you have to go out further than 6 months to find comps in a property, or do you avoid that? I do it. I mean, there's sometimes you just don't have a choice. And it may be a situation where I go back, and in this market lately, we don't not a lot of time adjustments. This is not like back at COVID where I was like, if it was 4 months ago, I really need to look the difference. I mean, it's been about the same for a year. But we do have to do a thing called bracketing. So if that 3-street subdivision only had the one sale and it was last January, I'm putting that in somewhere, and I might not even lean on it. But the fact that all my other comps are going to be out in another different other neighborhoods, I'd like to have at least one that lines up to go, look, you're telling the lender, the locations are similar. People are paying similar properties, and I was okay to go to this neighborhood. That's fine. You get some of the weird ones and horse farms and oddballs. I've had to go back, 3 years for a house that was built in 1889 or something like that, things like that.
Hello, Parkland.
Yeah. So because sometimes you go, well, my okay comps, I'll use 1, 2, 3, but I've got these older comps that are more similar to the house. They just didn't sell in the last 6 months. And I need to put those in again. I'm trying to give this lender a good picture. Like you said, the word is support. I'm giving you a value. I'm giving you all the support I can so that you agree with my value, that you're okay with my value, and we get a closing going on. Otherwise, you're getting, nitpicky stuff back to me. Oddball thing is that the harder the appraisal is, the less I usually get back from the lender. I think they look at it and they just go, man, he did what he could. I mean, he's written a long narrative addendum, and what is he going to do with this 19 acres out in Hope County, with the barns and stuff? They just get. And then I'll get nitpicked to death on a little cookie cutter subdivision one. You're like, are you kidding me? I got 5 comps. They all sold within 2 months, that kind of stuff. So, and the one beside that, what's the most important factors in the appraisal of a residential home? Location, we already know. Our next thing is we're looking at size, room count. The biggest thing after that always ends up being condition. And people get hung up on these little patios and decks and porches and stuff, but condition, have you updated stainless steel appliances? I mean, we look in the market now. Granite, stainless steel front or stainless steel appliances is almost a standard for anybody who's redoing their house, right? So when you start to look at yours and you got the old laminate counters and vinyl on the floor and white appliances and old bathroom fixtures, that's the thing. All we ask is that goes into take pictures, because you may not be able to put all that stuff in there, but I can tell your listing that has the granite and all that, and I have to use that one sale that was in the neighborhood that I don't really like, and I'm going to make a high condition adjustment. I see the white appliances, I see the bathrooms, I see the condition of the carpet and stuff like that.
Yeah, for
Gives me
Maggie
an
County.
idea what I'm raising that up to. And of course, I'm going to find one that's very similar to yours as far as condition, but I may have to use that just for location wise, or there's a reason. But I can adjust for anything as long as I tell the lender, this is why I'm adjusting, and they're fine.
Let me just reiterate something we said earlier on before I think some folks came in. Hey, you're part of the live audience, okay? So it's just like Dr. Phil. If you got a question, raise your hand. Yeah, kick it back and forth with us. We're open to answer the question, okay? If something comes up, we're like, what do you mean by that? Just ask us. We'll be glad to try to explain something in a little more detail, okay? Let's see, what was the next one here that we wanted to address? Should a broker be present during the appraisal? Well, if you want to be, it's never bothered me. I mean, we do refinances and the homeowner's usually home and, kind of following us around, that kind of thing. But think of it like this. If you got something, a better way to spend your time, we've had background checks done on us. Some require us to have background checks done every year. Okay. So you're not getting somebody sketchy going into the house, picking up stuff and going through drawers and all that kind of thing. But we're about efficiency. We want to get in and get out. All right. And that way we can get our work done the quickest way. If you want to walk with us and chat with us, that's great. But, that's going to slow the process down for you. So, if you got questions about it, or you want to make sure, hey, I want to make sure about, the hardwood floors in the living room were imported from Mexico in 1997. The chandelier in the entryway, next to the curved stairs going up to the second floor. Hey, that is a crystal chandelier that was brought in from France in 2005. Send us a list of those kind of things. I know some brokers put in an extra list of updates and improvements and when it was done. Perfect. That's great. That really helps us see, okay, well, hey, this one that sold for 10 grand more versus the other one that's by the same builder in the same subdivision. That's why it's in super condition, and the roof was replaced 2 years ago, and the roof on that one was replaced 10 years ago. It really helps us out.
I do have a question this time.
Okay, sure.
To distribute a condition adjustment sheet to the agents in the MLS.
It's an impossible thing to do. And that was one of the next things. What information do appraisers appreciate from agent? Photos. It is the most objective adjustment that we can make, right? And generally we extract it from using one that's a similar condition, one hasn't been updated, one's been completely remodeled. So when we say, I don't know what your house is going to be when I start putting comparables in, but I grid these all next to each other and I can see how then you start to pull things out after I've adjusted for static items like porches, patios, decks, square footage, bedroom, bath count, things like that. Things that I know I'm going to make an adjustment for. Now I'm down to condition, and a lot of times you extract. Well, that one's other than that, it's all completely equal. They're pretty close, but the difference in sales price between might end up being $6,500. So the difference between the updating that I had on this house versus the one that wasn't updated in this appraisal is $6,500. So that's why I say there's just no list where we go oven or range is worth this and that kind of thing, because it just doesn't work that way. There's what it costs versus what somebody's willing to pay for it in the market. And when we got to COVID, I had lower condition adjustments because people were paying for the old stuff almost as much as they were the new stuff, because they're like, I'll go to Lowe's and buy new appliances, but I need a house right now. You know how COVID was, right? So the market said, we don't care as much about the new stuff, but when you get into a competitive market, they do. Vinyl and laminate counters are not going to go for what granite and stainless steel appliances are going to go for. But that's why I say it's the hardest adjustment that you guys would ever do, and it's normally the hardest we do, and it's usually the last adjustment I do. Yeah. So that I've already got all the things that I pretty much know, whether it's garage, and they're not usually a lot of adjustments. I mean, if you pull good comps, you probably won't have a single garage house versus your double car garage. You're going to have comps with all double garages, so you don't have to make adjustments. But condition is that hardest. And as you do your CMA, You just look and see, because what you're trying to do is take those 4 sales prices or 3 sales prices, and you're trying to get a really, really tight range from them, right? So you're making adjustments until they get there. And once you've adjusted for things you know, well, now I can adjust for things I don't really know. And that's going to be the condition. And I was like, that's how we come up with that value. Which is why I said the other thing, what we need is photos, photos, photos. A 5x10 deck on the back of your house is not, your listing's got a triple tier deck that's 18x30 or whatever. And then I've got comps that just say decks and no picture of the back of the house. And I was like, well, okay, I mean, there's an adjustment there. So I'm trying, that's what I call it, tell the agents, I was like, that's my ammunition, right? I got an ammunition to adjust up. And so you're not yelling at me, why did he use that comp and all that kind of stuff? And I go, well, the comp was beautiful. If it was adjusted correctly, it was all over your sales price. But if it's not put in the MLS right, then it could drag yours down. So when I used to speak in front of the luncheon, I used to say, look, I know it's not that big a deal for your house. It's going to probably sell. People are going to see it. It's for sale. But your sale is his comp on his next sale. And I was like, so we're all in this together. So when we say this is not just a marketing tool for MLS, it is a sales history and listing history. And you're helping all the other agents out by putting correct information into the MLS, because that comp may be the one that closes your house with no problem, you know? So
Jason has touched on something that, we also usually get questions on every year. Why can't we adjust it and figure out listing prices with square footage, price per square foot? And I always ask people, well, think about what goes into the final sales price of the house. Everything. Okay. You got all the square footage of the heated and cooled house. You got the square footage in the bathrooms, the bedrooms, the kitchen, etc. You don't have a square footage included in the garage, but you got value for the garage. You don't have a square footage for the pool, but you got value for the pool. You don't have square footage for a really nice man cave shed out there that you got electricity going to and you send Bob out to real often. But you got value for it. It's not included in the square footage. So, your house may not have any of those things, but the houses that you picked in your CMA might have a 3-car garage, might have, privacy fences, might have pools. And so you want to use those higher prices per square foot on those things. Another thing that impacts the price per square foot is the size. Think about it like a box of Odie Floaties, okay? On the smaller box, you're paying more per ounce for the cereal, right? On the bigger box, you're getting a deal. They don't have to, build, 20 small boxes to put that big box contents in. So smaller square footage, Jason mentioned before, we try to bracket everything. So just like, something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, we're trying to get something bigger, something smaller, something older, something newer, to kind of help us triangulate and zero in on a final value for property that's being sold. So you see those things in there, and maybe that one older is 20 years older. And, sometimes if there's a big age difference, we will make an age adjustment. A lot of times, 4 or 5 years, not really an age adjustment. You'll look at houses that are 60, 70 years old in some parts of town and the counties. That's their actual age versus their effective age. And some appraisers adjust on effective age, some don't. And the reason for that is, there's not really something being flushed out as being a big difference. 40-year-old house versus 60-year-old house. Both of them were flipped 5 years ago and totally, stripped down to the bones and everything. Is there really an effective difference for them? No. Is there an actual age difference? Yeah, 20 years. Does it matter? No, not in that case. Yeah. But you're looking at a summary that, we got space for a couple of paragraphs in the forms. You're not getting told, all of the level of detail. You got to look at some of that stuff yourself, or some of them. I try to explain that myself, and sometimes my reports get a little wordy. But a number of my contemporaries in the business don't get as descriptive or explain quite as much in the reports. Sure.
For the property taxes, where they did the reevaluation and things
Uh-huh.
like that, and what type of appraisals did y'all do during that time? Because I know a lot of people was asking for appraisals during that time.
I did full, it's a general purpose. I mean, it's the same type of an appraisal. It doesn't have all the weird,
market value.
but we're doing fair market value but we're doing retroactive appraisals, right? So I did them after January, but my effective date is January 1st, the date the tax office put on there, right? So I might have inspected it in March, and I did not nearly as many as I did probably 2 seasons ago, but maybe I did 5 or so. And I can tell you, it's the same as the last time I did it. I really, unless the tax records has you finished where you're not finished, it was accurate enough. It was not helping anybody. And I was like, people were just in shock because your house went $100,000 during COVID, right?
Yeah.
But, and some of these, I try to talk to them about it and go, do you really need an appraisal? No, I really want to take this down there. But there was a lot of them, I was like, well, thank you so much, but I'm not even going to go down to the office now because this is so close to what it was. And I was like, it was just shock value. If you haven't been selling or real estate, you had no idea what's been going on around you. Suddenly your house, I said, then the discussion I had with them was like, yes, your taxes went higher, but do you understand that you are now $100,000 wealthier than you were 2 years ago, and you didn't have to do anything, right? So there's a plus and minus in this. I mean, don't get really mad about it. Yes, your tax bill went up, but if you sell your house, you got a good profit.
Jason touched on a couple of real important things in there too, and I'd like to expand on that. I've been working with the tax office, helping them review some of these things. Number one, and probably the most important, is it's as of January 1, 2025. And all the comps that you would use to support that value are before that closed sales. So if, the market goes up and down, kind of like that, trends, and so forth. So if you're thinking the sales of your neighborhood in April or May or June or July show a completely different value, they are not applicable. This tax office is going to tell you, no, we don't use those. We're looking at the value for what he was saying, a retrospective. We look back in time. We're getting in the Wayback Machine and going back a year, okay, to figure out that value. And I've seen folks come in there and try to argue the value that's not worth that. I can't sell it for that. So well, in January 1, everything that's sold in the neighborhood, and they have all the sales because they get the final closed deed values feed right into what they know. Okay.
So the conditions didn't play a part,
I'm sorry.
like the condition of the home didn't play a part.
The way that they do appraisals, they do mass appraisals. So in other words, if you're in Montclair and there's 200 houses in Montclair, in 2024, 12 of them sold, and they went up $110,000, or basically 50% of their value in that last year. Water level raised, all the boats in the sea in Montclair, that same percentage. Okay, so they don't get in the house unless you call them and say, hey, this is way overvalued. My grandma and granddad lived in there. They haven't updated it since 1976 when they built the house. Come look at it, and they'll come out and look at it. Word of caution with that. Were you telling me about the 3-car garage that got built?
Yeah, there were things where I did a couple where they didn't have their 3-car garage in the backyard on the tax card. And I was like, don't tell them you have a 3-car garage. One, the value is probably what they said it was, but they're going to increase your value when they see that garage and come out and measure it. So sometimes, and it was last time, sometimes it's good to look at it and go, all right, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. All right, I've checked it, but that's fine. There's square footage is off 160 square feet. They got you smaller than what you are. And I know even my house right now is at least 100 and something square foot off. And I would call them and tell them that. So, so I surprised some people, but I can tell you, it was almost like the last time. I was like, unless the tax records really were off, said your second floor was finished and it was just an attic or whatever, they were pretty close. I mean, close enough within 3% or so to where they were probably not going to make an adjustment on yours. I just didn't save anybody's bacon on that.
They're technical tools for looking at the GIS and, looking at the footprints, those kind of things are pretty darn accurate. Okay. For them saying, hey, the square footage that we can see on the ground. Yeah, that calculates out, but they'll come out, they'll remeasure the house. Now, that's a word of caution. If you've added anything, they're going to see that. But if you've taken anything out, like you took the pool out, but it's still on the tax records. There's one in my neighborhood got filled in last year. Is it still on the tax records? Yeah. Are they paying taxes on it? Yeah. So,
If you look at
It's something to
miscellaneous
come up.
improvements, they are normally not giving you a lot. In fact, in a lot of cases, they give you less than what we give you for some miscellaneous improvements. All right. So they don't really try to tag you for those buildings in the back and stuff like that. So, um, I go to 20. So what advice would you give real estate agents to better prepare their listings for appraisals? So the ones, and we're generally back to FHA, but still this is conventional too. Please have the keys for every place I need to get into. All right. If it's got a carport storage and I can't get into it, even on conventional, they want me to take a picture of that. A lot of times it has the a water heater in there, and if that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine, but
Laundry
give me
bay.
that key. You don't want me to have to go back over there. Same thing with locks on crawl spaces to get in FHA. And even outbuildings. And I don't know why I run into these outbuildings that I want to give you some value, and there's nothing in it, and there's been nothing in it before, and it's the unfinished plywood, and you got a deadbolt, a lock on it. And I'm like, why is this even still locked? No one's stealing anything from here. So I've been trying to take pictures through the window, the foggy little window, and put my camera up against it or whatever, because I just desperately don't want to have you to pay me to come back out there and just unlock that thing. So I just say, just make sure all parts of the house are accessible to us. It's really the only prep that we need.
Yeah, well, walk through the house with them. And I'm sure a lot of you do that when you're setting up a listing, walking through and helping them see, hey, yeah, we need to remove the clutter from the kids' bedrooms and, take all that stuff off the floor. But, if at that point, you tell them, hey, we need to see that the window's open so we get, make this available for an FHA loan, open a couple of the windows, open the windows in the bedroom and say, oh, hey, that's stuck. Oh, this one's broken. The lock doesn't work. Well, nothing more frustrating to you guys and to us to have to go back out and open a window. Because I'm 180 pounds, 6 foot. I lean into it. I have broken windows. I don't do that anymore. I open a window with what I call a 2-finger test because 10-year-old. If I can open it with 2 fingers, a 10-year-old can open it. But
that's why I said they need to provide a basic FHA class and probably come up with the top 10 things that appraisers call for on FHA, because a lot of them are so minor. Put those outlet and plug plates on, that are missing. The kids cracked them and they're broken or whatever. They're what, $1.15? I think you get a contractor thing for 10 of them or whatever. And they're paying me $125 to come back out there and take a picture of 3 outlet covers, one in the garage and one somewhere else. It's because that wiring is exposed. A kid could get their finger in there and get shocked. It's a minor thing, but you'd be amazed how many times I see it. And some of this is still, agents don't really understand FHA. They just got an FHA loan and they're just going to let the appraiser deal with it and all that stuff. But there's things that you can prep your seller with that if you say, hey, got an FHA loan, we need to do a couple of these little minor things. And then certainly we talked about all paint surfaces have to be. A lot of times if it's a shed out there and it's the old rusty metal one, I ignore it. I'm not giving you value for that. If it's another one that's really beat up, I'm not going to say go paint that out because the roof's caving in or whatever. It's anything I give value to has to be. But if it's still in such condition, I don't care. I won't give you value, and FHA I won't even note it on the report.
Everything has to be an average condition. For your conventional lenders, it's got to be an average or above. Okay. For FHA and VA, above is probably a better place to be. Okay. Doesn't have to be, but you can't have, busted windows, open windows that don't work, things like that. And it boils down to safety requirements. 2 big enemies of a house: water and electricity. Water because it rots wood, it rots everything that it sits on. And electricity because it starts fires. You see that overloaded outlet. No. Tell them to get an outlet extension, with a overload protection on it and plug something like that in. But nah.
And some of the discussion with your sellers, if you got an as is, it's an estate. Those kids don't want to put one dime into it. Put cash or conventional. Just don't bother with FHA and VA, because then you just open up a headache, and it's not going to pass, and they're not going to make the repairs. So why go through the whole process with contracts and all that stuff and just make everybody mad at the end? And so there's some houses where I pop up and go, there's no way. And there's a reason I will not accept, I don't do reverse mortgages anymore. I stopped doing those 10 years ago. I just don't like being involved with it. I feel kind of icky. And they're always FHA, and it was always some rural property, whatever. And you go out there and there's a blue tarp on the roof and a window busted or whatever. And you know, these people, there's no way this is happening, right? It wouldn't happen conventionally, but it certainly isn't going to happen when FHA going to say, oh, by the way, to get this reverse loan, you're going to have to spend about $15,000 to get the loan. And they're usually in a position where, like, we needed the loan because we don't have $15,000.
Yeah.
So I just felt bad in that. And I was like, so I just know I don't see them nearly as much as I did. It's occasionally, but I was like, I just don't touch them. I just feel bad even getting involved in it. Right. And I'm not saying anything about reverse mortgages because they may be fine for some circumstances. It's just my experience has been you should have asked these people to send you a photo of their house, right? And this is all right. Once we got the photos, I was like, why aren't these lenders just going, hey, give me about 4 pictures of your house inside and send it to me, and I'll before we start up this loan process. But they don't. They don't ask them anything about their house, and then I'm the first person that's on the doorstep telling them there's no way this loan's going through. And years ago, I used to be able to stop a loan. I would get up to somewhere and I'd call my lender and go, look, this is what I'm looking at. Can I just charge a trip charge? This is not going to happen. And that was the day they were writing me a check. They were handing me a check at the door. And I'm like, this might be their social security check, right? Are we really going to put these people through this? Can I get out of it? But now after the laws change, I can't do any of that. I get ordered to go to an appraisal. I go to the appraisal, no matter what I think during the process, I turn in an appraisal and I get paid. So I can't use my conscience anymore. And so luckily you don't see that stuff.
Jay, I'm sorry to tell you, my
Mhm.
friend, we've burned our out.
Fantastic. I was looking.
Before we close it down and thank you all for coming in, is there anything else from the audience that you'd like to ask? Okay, yeah, sure.
So the commission, C2, C3, not to C5. How, is there any guidance you can give us there?
Okay, when we're talking a C4, that's on that's considered average, but needs a little something. So 4, 3, 2, 1. 1 is brand new. 2 is like brand new or completely refurbished, but maybe it's a brand new one that because they couldn't sell it.
The builder's model home a lot of times that way,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's in great
It's a year
shape.
old.
Nobody's ever lived
No one's lived in it, but it is. Yeah, we went to these condition ratings about 6 years ago one time, and I had them switch over, maybe even longer than that. And then Debbie said, well, they don't understand what they are based on our definition. So I put in a layman's definition. And what I said is your C4 is your average, got a little deferred maintenance, some updates, not a lot, not a lot of updates, kind of the adds in, older carpet, things like that. You're going to have a little deferred maintenance. That's the old average. When you get to C3, it's good. There's some updates. You might have a tiny bit of deferred maintenance, but it's in good shape. It's what you would put good or very good. We get to C5, you can't even get a loan on a C5. You have to make the adjustments up. And the C5, it's still livable, but it is missing things. It might be missing an appliance, and its roof definitely needs a new roof.
The appraisal is going to be subject to, and you're going to have.
We don't see a lot of that unless we're doing foreclosures, right? So we're in the C4, C3, and C1 almost 99% of the time.
A C6 is they've gutted the
A
place.
gutted out crack
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
That's C6. And I haven't seen those in a long time, but I've seen that before. I was like, the door's wide open, when you get there, and there's graffiti all in there, and the carpets, and people have been going in there for a while, right? So I worked with my dad when I was young and over near Bonnie Doon, and we refurbished some of those houses. And yeah, they're well-worn houses by the time you go over and do it. So we don't even see that. Frank had to do a land appraisal on one. I wouldn't even go in. I walked in and there was a guy coming to the door with no shirt on and no teeth and wanted to know if I could use his phone. And I see somebody else running around the side, and I see the graffiti in there. It was off of Owen Drive. And I came back lender and said, that's not safe for me. I just drove on by. And so they ignored it. And next thing you know, because we work in the same company, I think a month later, he got just a land-only appraisal for that house. They were like, we're not even want to know what the dwelling's worth. And they said he could drive by and click that. And I was like, that's what you do with that house. But
yeah, so we do a full spectrum of properties. I mean, yeah, I was in a manufacturer that they'd stolen the front door off, they'd taken down the back door, they took all the light fixtures out, all the kitchen, appliances and counters, and cut out the rug and took the rugs.
So we hope you're not getting the C6 listing. That will never be a problem for you, because that is one of those cash only, should have sold at the courthouse sect, or the county took it over or something. And so I said, it's mostly C4 and C5, and that's what we
Are
try.
we supposed to?
When I
Oh,
put, and I was mad because they removed those condition adjustments, when I put the layman definitions in there,
It's okay.
our MLS was the most accurate ever was, because you guys had an idea, where do I slot this, right? And before that, everything's excellent. Oh, it's excellent or very good. And then we go over there and go, man, if this is excellent, I mean, I don't know what average is, because it's hard. I mean, this needs to be painted, the carpet's old, and things like that. So we tried to narrow it down a little bit. And the powers that be thought that you were not competent enough to figure that out, and that you would only get in trouble using those codes. So we lost the codes, and now we're back to whatever it is. We didn't have condition for a couple months at all. And then they put it back on, and I was like, well, what's your very good to my good to her average or whatever. I was like, what does that mean? That's why I wanted to get more detailed and have that list, so you could just look at that definition and go, my house is a C3, my house is a C4, and it could be a nicer C4 or a lower C3. I mean, there's
Yeah,
little ranges in there.
So, yeah.
But
it's not-
they were, for that while that we had that, the conditions were so close to reality that we've ever had. And I was like, so we were not happy that we lost that, because it was like, it really was, people were telling the truth, right?
Okay, we've had one final question come in from the online viewers. The increases in value by the city. Tax values are higher than what I would price a home at due to condition of the home. The seller wants the market value listed by the city tax department. Do you look at that when you are figuring the value? Tax values don't impact us because they don't go in the house. Okay, they don't know what's there.
You wouldn't want us
They
to
have
do
no-
that, right?
No.
Because I mean, a year ago, you want to see that tax value is $89,000. You got a list price of $180,000. So no, there was a stable market at a time when people would say, what do you think my house is worth? And I was like, it's usually about 10% higher than your tax value. In 2008 or 2009, I was like, then it just went all wonky, right? And then they're not even close. And now I don't think they're close. But you have to understand, they went back 2 years. They went back during the good times. And we kept talking on the phone going, man, we know the reval's coming out. What years are they using? Man, if you use anywhere near COVID, everybody's going to be screaming. But then that happened back in the early 2000s. It went up like that much. But then the next assessment, everybody went down, and they weren't happy with that. So it's like that. But I was like, COVID was just a different animal in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Everywhere,
it's
across
just
the country.
absolutely insane. We as appraisers were like, how bad do you need a house, man? I mean, how bad do you need a house to pay 30? And my friends in Raleigh were like, no, they're paying $100,000 due diligence. They're paying 100,000, you know. And I was like, you're going to buy a house, you know, you're in $100,000 underwater the day you sign the loan. And it's like back in 2004. Do you think it's just going to keep skyrocketing and you're going to eat this up? So we were waiting kind of for the chickens to come home to roost, to where these people are stuck in these houses trying to resell them for their COVID price, and they're not going to get it, right? All right.
Okay, one last question? Yeah.
Yes, I just want to know about the C1 and C2. I know you said that you don't use them anymore, but what?
Oh, we use them in every appraisal. We're required.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
we're
data.
required to show.
C1's new construction. Very easy. Just, it's brand new. C2 is almost feels like new construction. I've seen some appraisers have done that for these flips. I feel like and if you found a flip that was floor to roof done, right, you probably would. But most of them have been flipped. It's a new roof, new appliances, new flooring, or whether I'm putting it in that C3 category. And then C2, as we just said, I have done if it's over a year old, and we may start having those more now with the slowdown, because I guess they're still building. It's the model home. It's been sitting there. No one has lived in it.
Yeah.
So, but it's not brand new. You know, the roof might be a year old. All the things are a year old, but it's close to new. That would be C2. I said, very few of those. I said, you're either in a new construction or you're C3 or C4. And that C3 is average. I mean, C3 is good, very good. And C4 is average.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you all
Thank
coming
you.
in today. Sure. Oh,
Thank
cool. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
All right.
My condition stuff.
Yeah, 10 rooms in 1,100 square feet.
You do, and sometimes it's more than that. And I don't. You assume typo. Some of these things you try to assume a typo, but then I see so much, and I was like, I just don't.